Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and welcome to the Schiff Maguire show. Da 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 da! Yeah, this is how I spent my day today, and I'm going to save you from having to watch it yourself because it was, what a farce. Anyway, it started out with Adam Schiff, and he gave a summary of Trump's conversation with Zelensky. And by the way, I do have that here. I will make sure that the link is down below. I'm going to do a second video that is on something touching this. And so, yeah, you'll have it there too. And I'll mention a little bit more about it. But anyway, with this, he starts out and he gives this parody, I guess. Because essentially what he did was he created a story based on some of the things Trump said, but giving Adam Schiff's perspective on it. Oh yeah, you think that's bizarre? You should have heard it. So, I'm going to let you hear it. Here you go.
And what is the president's response? Well, it reads like a classic organized crime shakedown. Shorn of its rambling character and in not so many words, this is the essence of what the president communicates. We've been very good to your country, very good. No other country has done as much as we have. But you know what? I don't see much reciprocity here. I hear what you want. I have a favor I want from you, though. And I'm going to say this only 7 times, so you better listen good. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent, understand lots of it. On this and on that. I'm going to put you in touch with people, and not just any people. I'm going to put you in touch with Attorney General of the United States, my Attorney General, Bill Barr. He's got the whole weight of the American law enforcement behind him. And I'm going to put you in touch with Rudy. You're going to love him, trust me. You know what I'm asking, and so I'm only going to say this a few more times, in a few more ways. And by the way, don't call me again. I'll call you when you've done what I asked. This is, in character, what the president was trying to communicate with the president of Ukraine. It would be funny if it wasn't such a graphic portrayal of the president's oath of office.
Well, later on down the line, one of our guys called him on it. And Schiff was not real happy about that. But I think he did an awesome job. So listen to this and you'll find out what we think of Adam Schiff's little stunt.
Dr. Wenstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you, Mr. Maguire, for being here today. You know, I think it's a shame that we started off this hearing with fictional remarks, the implication of a conversation that took place between a president and a foreign leader, putting words into it that did not exist, they're not in the transcript. And I will contend that those were intentionally not clear, and the chairman described it as parody, and I don't believe that this is the time or the place for parody when we are trying to seek facts. Nor do those that were involved with the conversation agree with the parody that the chairman gave us. And unfortunately today, many innocent Americans are going to turn on their TV and the media is only going to show that section of what the chairman had to say. But I'm also glad to know that many Americans have seen this movie too many times and they're tired of it. But let me get to some questions, sir, if I can. Let's go to the word credible. Credible does not mean proven true or factual. Would that be correct in this situation?
I find no fault in your logic, Congressman.
Okay, so, you know, the interpretation, it was credible, but also, was that decision made by the IG before seeing the transcript of the conversation?
I believe that the IG conducted to his best of his ability the investigation, and he found to his ability that based on the evidence and discussing it with the whistleblower, that he thought that, in fact, it was credible.
But the IG didn't necessarily have the transcript of the conversation?
He did not. No, he did not.
Okay, that's my question. So to another point, you know, one of the issues that arose out of the Russia investigation last Congress was a question over the latitude provided to the U.S. president to conduct foreign affairs. In 2017, I asked then CIA Director Brennan how he viewed statements made by President Obama to Russian President Medvedev regarding having more flexibility to negotiate after his 2012 election. And President Medvedev replied that he would transmit the information to Vladimir and that Medvedev stood with President Obama. That was in an open hearing. Director Brennan wouldn't entertain my question and insisted on not answering due to the fact that the conversation was between the heads of government. That's what he said. He further claimed he was avoiding getting involved in political partisan issues, which brings me to a similar question related to this whistleblower complaint. One, you said this executive privilege is unwaverable, and I think that's kind of consistent with CIA Director Brennan was implying.
Congressman, only the White House and the president can waive executive privilege. The president exerts executive privilege, and only the White House and the president can waive that.
So, Director Brennan gave me the impression then that was like, that's the rule, that's the law. So I'm going to have to go with that. But do you believe the president's entitled to withhold his or her communications from Congress if the conversation is used in a whistleblower case?
I think that the president, when he conducts diplomacy and deals with foreign heads of state, he has every right to be able to have that information be held within the White House and the executive branch. And if yesterday, I think the transmission of the call is unprecedented, and it's also, I think that other future leaders, when they interact with our head of state, might be more cautious in what they say and reduce the interaction that they have with the president because of that release.
So we may need to change our process here because I guess if a decision regarding executive privilege, maybe it should be made prior to submitting the communication to Congress.
Well, either that, I believe that this committee wrote the law, and based on what we're doing today, perhaps it needs to be relooked. I don't know. I leave that to the legislative branch.
So also, if we may need to change process. The 14 days, that might be kind of tough to adhere to. So I think maybe, this is a special circumstance, unprecedented. Maybe there should be some leeway in the time frame instead of the narrow 14 days. And I don't know if did you feel or did the IG ever say that they felt rushed to making a decision because of the 14-day process?
No, Congressman. I believe that he's a very experienced inspector general. He's used to dealing with the 14-day process. And when you work under a timeline like that, he worked with his staff and I think endeavored to the extent because he was following the statute as he believed it was written. So I would think that any prudent lawyer would like to have more time to be able to collect the facts and do other things. But Michael Atkinson was under the 14-day timeline, and he did the best of his ability to comply with that.
Did you feel rushed in any way, sir?
I did not.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman.
Now, in case you didn't watch this, the essence of it is this Joseph Maguire came in as the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, after Dan Coates, okay? Because at first it was the woman, her name's escaping me right now, Penny, whatever, something like that. And then she was also removed. And he came in, and this guy really kind of got blindsided because I don't think he was expecting ever to be in that position. And he kind of got put into it, and then everything hit the fan right then, actually right before he came in. And one of the first things he got was a subpoena from this group to come in and talk to him. And it's like, oh, that would not be a good way to start a new job, do you think? Anyway, so he was subpoenaed to come in and to testify in front of this committee. And essentially what happened was, if you remember, Dan Coates left on the 15th of August. And the 12th, I believe, is when all of this started with the whistleblower and everything. And Trump's conversation with Zelensky was back in July 25th. It was the day after Mueller, I believe. So anyway, this is what was going on. This guy steps into the position and gets slapped with a subpoena to testify on something that he wasn't even there when it happened. So, yeah, it was presented to him, and it was a situation that had never, ever occurred before, because we have a whistleblower who went to the IG, which is the appropriate thing for a whistleblower to do. And the IG is of the intelligence community here. That's their IG. This whistleblower makes all these claims about Trump. Well, it has to go through the process of whistleblowers. And the IG at the time said it seemed like it was credible. But here's my question about this IG. If he's such an upstanding guy, why did he accept a complaint about someone who's not in the department he's in charge of? Because you see, now you guys probably already know this because we've talked about IGs before, but an inspector general is in charge of a certain department, and that's the only department they can investigate. I mean, they can't go outside their department and investigate people. They can't even investigate any employees who have already been dismissed. They can't investigate those. They can only investigate the people within their own department. Okay? So what in the world was this guy doing investigating a whistleblower complaint against Trump? Okay? Because Trump is not in the ODNI. He's not in that office. He's not in that department. No, he's above that department. So why would that inspector general accept that whistleblower complaint? I just kind of am questioning that to begin with. All right. Now, I know that particular IG was put in there by Trump. He was appointed by Trump. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything when you're dealing with the swamp, because the swamp is very, very big. And some of those swamp creatures actually look like real people until you get them in office, and then they do things. So I'm not saying this guy isn't above board. They all talked very highly about him. But, I do have to wonder why he accepted that in the first place. And so this was a situation that this Joseph Maguire was in, because he had a situation that had never happened before. First of all, the whistleblower complaint was against someone who wasn't in his department. So what do you do with that? I mean, you're not supposed to deal with IG reports that are from somewhere outside your department. Secondly, it was marked like urgent or something like that. There's a certain code that they have. Well, it didn't fit the criteria for that. And because it had to do with the president, there was one other element that was very important, because there's such a thing as executive privilege. And any conversations that go on with the president are really able to be classified as executive privilege. And you have to clear it first. You can't just go and have a meeting with the president and he tells you things and then you turn around and tell anyone you want. That's not necessarily true. You got to clear it with the guy because of who he is. He's the president. So there are things that, when you're in conversation with him, he might say, you're not allowed to repeat those things. And so what you talk about or what you don't talk about, especially as the DNI, because that's a really big, important position to be in. So you've got to be somebody who's not going to go blabbing your mouth all over the creation. And so this guy holds that intelligence aspect, the secrecy that he's supposed to have. He holds it very dearly. And you can see, if you watch the whole thing, you do get the feeling that he holds his, integrity very closely, and that he's very proud that he follows the rule of law. He follows the law. And here he was in a situation where he had the law that said if it was urgent, it had to be sent over to them within 7 days. Or possibly 14 days, because I heard both numbers. But whatever the case was, he had a certain time limit he was supposed to send it over in. So then you also have this situation where the conversation itself could be classified as executive privilege. So that would not allow them to be able to deal with it in the same manner. So the first thing they had to do was they had to get that settled. I mean, there were some major legal things going on. So while the law said he was supposed to turn it over quickly, the law also said that it didn't fit the criteria to be considered urgent, like they said. So that was part of it. And then the other part of it was, it's the president. It's talking about the president. It could be that he wants to exert executive privilege over it. So if that's the case, this guy had a real weird situation. And so he sought legal counsel. Well, they're trying to make it, oh, well, you went to Trump. It's about Trump, and you went to Trump. No, he didn't go to Trump. He went to the White House counsel, who is exactly who you go to if you want to find out whether the president wants to exert his executive privilege over something or not. That's where you go. He also went to the Office of Legal Counsel, which is the office that they all go to and they all have to adhere to. I mean, when the Office of Legal Counsel puts together a paper about, an opinion on something, that's pretty much law within that branch. I mean, that's just what they have to go by because that's what they do. So this was the situation. And so he was, put in a very difficult spot. He followed what he believed were the best steps to get it done correctly, to handle it well. Because, this guy knew the minute he saw the document, the complaint, he knew that this was going to be like a hornet's nest. He was well aware of that. So he tried to protect himself, which is what he should have been doing, by doing it right. He wanted to make sure that whatever he did correctly. And that's what he did. So, Schiff tries to make it like this guy did things to try to cover up for Trump. And then when, he went to Trump because Trump is the person named in there. And then he went to Barr and Barr's named in there too. Well, Barr's named in there, but it's just like he's named. I mean, it really has nothing to do with that. This whole thing went on. It just was very frustrating to watch it. I agree so much with Devin Nunes when he first started out. This was his opening statement to this guy.
Thank the gentleman. I want to congratulate the Democrats on the rollout of their latest information warfare operation against the president and their extraordinary ability to once again enlist the mainstream media in their campaign. This operation began with media reports from the prime instigators of the Russia collusion hoax that a whistleblower is claiming President Trump made nefarious promise to a foreign leader. The released transcript of that call has already debunked that central assertion. But that didn't matter. The Democrats simply moved the goalposts and began claiming that there doesn't need to be a quid pro quo for this conversation to serve as the basis for impeaching the president. Speaker Pelosi went further when asked earlier if she would put brakes on impeachment if the transcript turned out to be benign. She responded, quote, "So there you go. If the whistleblower operation doesn't work out, the Democrats and their media, we have candidates, quote, we have many candidates for impeachable offenses." That was her quote. So there you go. If the whistleblower operation doesn't work out, the Democrats and their media assets can always drum up something else. And what other information has come to light since the original false report of a promise being made? We've learned the following. The complaint relied on hearsay evidence provided by the whistleblower. The Inspector General did not know the contents of the phone call at issue. The Inspector General found the whistleblower displayed arguable political bias against Trump. The Department of Justice investigated the complaint and determined no action was warranted. The Ukrainian president denies being pressured by President Trump. So once again, this supposed scandal ends up being nothing like what we were told. And once again, the Democrats, their media mouthpieces, and a cabal of leakers are ginning up a fake story with no regard to the monumental damage they're causing to our public institutions and to trust in government. And without acknowledging all the false stories they propagated in the past, including countless allegations that Trump campaign colluded with Russia to hack the 2016 election. We're supposed to forget about all those stories, but believe this one. In short, what we have with this storyline is another Steele dossier. I'll note here that in the Democrats' mania to overturn the 2016 elections, everything they touch gets hopelessly politicized. With the Russia hoax, it was our intelligence agencies which were turned into a political weapon to attack the president. And now today, the whistleblower process is the casualty. Until about a week ago, the need to protect that process was a primary bipartisan concern of this committee. But if the Democrats were really concerned with defending that process, they would have pursued this matter with a quiet, sober inquiry, as we do for all whistleblowers. But that would have been useless for them. They don't want answers. They want a public spectacle. And so we've been treated to an unending parade of press releases, press conferences, and fake news stories. This hearing itself is another example. Whistleblower inquiries should not be held in public at all. As our Senate counterparts, both Democrats and Republicans, obviously understand, their hearing with Mr. Maguire is behind closed doors. But again, that only makes sense when your goal is to get information, not to create a media frenzy. The current hysteria has something else in common with the Russia hoax. Back then, they accused the Trump campaign of colluding with Russians when the Democrats themselves were colluding with Russians and preparing the Steele dossier. Today, they accuse the president of pressuring Ukrainians to take actions that would help himself or hurt his political opponents. And yet there are numerous examples of Democrats doing the exact same thing. Joe Biden bragged that he extorted the Ukrainians into firing a prosecutor who happened to be investigating Biden's own son. 3 Democratic senators wrote a letter pressuring the Ukrainian general prosecutor to reopen the investigation into former Trump campaign officials. Another Democratic senator went to Ukraine and pressured the Ukrainian president not to investigate corruption allegations involving Joe Biden's son. According to Ukrainian officials, the Democratic National Committee contractor Alexandra Chalupa tried to get Ukrainian officials to provide dirt on Trump associates and tried to get the former Ukrainian president to comment publicly on alleged ties to Russia. Ukrainian official Sergei Leshchenko was a source for Nellie Orr, wife of Department of Justice official Bruce Orr, as she worked on the anti-Trump operation conducted by Fusion GPS and funded by the Democrats. And of course, Democrats on this very committee negotiated with people who they thought were Ukrainians in order to obtain nude pictures of Trump. People can reasonably ask why the Democrats are so determined to impeach this president when in just a year, they'll have a chance. In fact, one Democratic congressman, one of the first to call for Trump's impeachment, gave us the answer when he said, quote, "I'm concerned that if we don't impeach the president, he will get reelected," unquote. Winning elections is hard, and when you compete, you have no guarantee you'll win. But the American people do have a say in this, and they made their voices heard in the last presidential election. This latest gambit by the Democrats to overturn the people's mandate is unhinged and dangerous. They should end the entire dishonest, grotesque spectacle and get back to work to solving problems, which is what every member of this committee was sent here to do. Judging by today's charade, the chances of that happening anytime soon are 0 to none. I yield back.
So the Democrats tried to get him to say that because he said it was a credible complaint, that meant he believed it was true. And I was so grateful that he was given the opportunity to say, no, that's not what he meant. But to be honest, this guy is not the greatest witness. He's very honest and very logical, and he just couldn't understand that they were trying to set him up. I don't think he really got that, because I think he wants to believe that our government is not like that. So, yeah, a little naive in that respect. But that's what they were doing. They were trying to get those nice little sound bites so that it could be on the news. And he really did stick to his script, if you want to say it that way. You know, he had like certain things that he kept saying, because really when it came down to it, I think it's kind of silly that all this went on, because we've seen the complaint. So why are you whining and putting this man through this? Because, Schiff, now you have a transcript of the conversation. You have the complaint. why are you still whining? Okay? That really is what I felt like through this whole thing. Give it up. Give it up. You shouldn't complain. So, yeah, they're not happy campers, obviously. And it was pretty much all the Democrats had the same thing to say. And at one point, about 2/3 of the way through, the Republicans had all just left. They really did. They weren't even there. So, yeah, it didn't do any good because they had asked their questions. They got their information out. But if people will pay attention to them, I don't know. I'm sure hoping so, because the Democrats just don't care if they make up stories, and they just lie. So that's what it was all about. And at the very end, of course, Schiff got a chance to close it all up with a nice little diatribe. And that's where we stand. So that's what I've got on this one. But I'm going to do a second video that has some other stuff that's connected to this, but I didn't want to make the video real long. So there you go. So look for that one. I don't know when it's going to come out, when I get it done, I guess. So that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.
Well, sir.
Congressman Carson, a couple of things. The White House did not direct me to withhold the information. Neither did the Office of Legal Counsel. That opinion has been unclassified and has been disseminated. The question came down to urgent concern, which is a legal definition. It doesn't mean, is it important? Is it timely? Urgent concern met the certain criteria that we've discussed several times here. So it did not. And all that did, sir, was then just take away the 7 days. Now, as I said before, just because it was not forwarded to this committee does not mean that it went unanswered. The ICIG and the Justice Department referred it to the Federal Bureau of Investigation for investigation. So this is not the, and that was working while I was endeavoring to get the executive privilege concerns addressed so that it can then be forwarded. It was not stonewalling. I didn't receive direction from anybody. I was just trying to work through the process and the law the way it is written. I have to comply with the way the law is, not the way some people would like it to be.